We're very pleased here to have our special guest here from Westminster today. I'm Ian Hudgton, member of this European Parliament from the SNP and President of the SNP. But here today, the main reason for this event is to hear from Stephen Gethins, a member of the Westminster Parliament and the SNP spokesperson on Europe. And clearly with David Cameron's long-awaited letter being published this week, Europe and the UK, and in our case Scotland, and his role in that is very much on the agenda. So thank you for coming, and I'll hand you over to Stephen Gethins.
Okay, thanks Ian. Thank you also, colleagues, for coming out to join us today. My name's Stephen Gethins. I'm the Europe spokesperson at Westminster. So I've become spokesperson in rather interesting times. The SNP, so the Scottish National Party, are now the United Kingdom's third biggest political party. We went from 6 to 56 seats in the House of Commons, taking up that third place. We're also, in terms of Europe, we are the most pro-European, or we're the biggest pro-European party, because the Labour Party finds itself divided with a leader who has some difficulties around the European issue, and a Conservative Party, as in the governing party, who have some real difficulties with their backbenchers, as anybody who watched the Europe Minister's statement from the House of Commons on Tuesday will quickly realise. So we're a united pro-European party. My job over the next few months is to campaign hard for Scotland and the rest of the UK to remain a member of the European Union. We have a press briefing that should have been made available to colleagues. If you've not been able to get a copy of that, somebody will be able to handle it from just down to my left to your right. You'll be able to get copies of it here. What that tells us is that the polls in the United Kingdom between those intending to vote yes and no, and albeit the campaign hasn't really gotten underway properly yet, is very, very tight. I'm pleased to say that there's another YouGov poll that just came out, I think, last night, that shows in Scotland, not only is Scotland overwhelmingly in favour of remaining in the European Union, but when people were asked whether they saw the EU as a good or a bad thing, Scots overwhelmingly see it as a good thing. This is somewhat different to the rest of the United Kingdom. I think that one of the lessons behind that is Scotland's positive engagement with the European Union is one of the reasons why polls consistently show that Scots are more pro-European than those elsewhere in the United Kingdom. Saying that, I am keenly aware that we have a big job of work to do in terms of making sure that as many people vote to remain a part of the European Union as possible, and we'll be campaigning hard in Scotland to convince as many people to vote yes to staying in. But the message I want to give you today is that this is by no means certain. The polls are tight. I'd also say that we want to see a positive campaign, and if anybody's talking about Europe, I would encourage anybody to make the positive campaign. I don't think trying to tell people that they have to stay in Europe. I mean, I have no question that Britain could exist, the United Kingdom could exist as an independent country outside the European Union. I have no question that the UK can stand on its own 2 feet outside the EU. But my question is whether or not that's the best way forward. And I think the best way forward is to remain a member of the European Union. But we want to see a positive campaign, and we want to see one that engages the population as well. So with that, I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Right, thank you very much. Can I ask you, if you do want to ask a question, please just remind us of your name and organisation. Thank you.
James Drew, EU reporter. Mr Cameron has made 4 key demands, I think the most contentious of which is concerning migration.
Yeah.
Staying in the UK, how do you stand on the migration issue and Mr Cameron's demands for that to be, well, much reduced?
Yeah, it's a good point to raise it. I'll touch upon the letter in just a moment, and I should have done so in my opening remarks. On particularly the migration issue, the SNP believes that migration has been a good thing. I am somebody who's benefited from free movement. There are 173,000 EU nationals living in Scotland who contribute to our industry, to our academia, to our civic life, and who were incredibly active, incidentally, during the independence campaign in Scotland. So migration is a good thing. we don't back Conservative plans to hold back on immigration, because immigration is good for the economy. Sometimes we forget about that. And it's good for people, and free movement has been very, very good as well. So I don't think we're on the same page. Well, I can tell you right now, we're not on the same page as the Conservatives on the issue of immigration. And we think that free movement around Europe has been a good thing for our economy and for our society more broadly. The other thing that we tried to put, I put an amendment to the European referendum bill that would have given EU citizens the right to vote in the EU referendum. That was rejected by the Labour Party and the Conservative Party at Westminster. I think that's disappointing, because if we stop EU citizens, let's face it, those who have got the most to gain or lose from this referendum from taking part, I think we'll lose a big part of our society in that. So I was disappointed. We're also left with the situation whereby Maltese, Cypriot and Irish citizens can vote, but citizens of other EU countries can't. And there's a member of the Scottish Parliament, a guy called Christian Allard, an excellent member of the Scottish Parliament who's contributed hugely to Scottish life. He can't vote in the referendum, which is a faintly ridiculous situation. In terms of the letter, I don't think there's much there. Now, we will campaign to stay in the European Union. We're not questioning that the European Union needs some reform. But there's not much there, and I'm not sure it's going to be enough for David Cameron to keep his backbenchers happy. And certainly the evidence from the House of Commons this week was that it is not enough to keep his backbenchers happy.